So, hello everyone. Welcome to the monthly Technical Steering Committee update from Linux Foundation Energy Project EVerest. We are the one software stack to charge them all. And we have some interesting updates this week. There's quite some news about the Open Charge Alliance. Pionix was elected as board member. We will also host an open source conference and a Plugfest end of February. There's some big progress on ISO 118-20, OCPP 2.01, and also Rust implementation. And also some big, let's say, more internal news. The community is growing like crazy over the last weeks. And in order to still be functional, we now will propose to split up more into working groups. We want to propose how to do that and also make a voting on that. But let's get this started. First of all, there might be competitors here in the room, so different companies working on the same thing. So please behave, stick to the rules, and yeah, let's dive into this. So what's new? First of all, I think one really interesting news, and I also personally have to say thank you to the global community. There is the Open Charge Alliance. Not sure if you know that organization. They are basically the 300-ish companies, non-profit organization owning the OCPP standard and organizing how Char.js and clouds are interacting. I think they did their first ever public voting on a board seat, and that went to Pionix. So thanks a lot for everyone who voted for me, and also thanks a lot for everyone. We try to bring from Pionix side the voice of open source into that. So let's see if we can represent you well. Just ping me or Pionix if you have any wishes when it comes to policy. And yeah, we try to play with everyone in this open source and charter community, and I think that's a big step forward. Next news, kind of unrelated. We, as Pionix, will host the next Open Charge Alliance Plugfest, so compatibility test event in Germany, 28th and 29th of February. We will, additionally, there's typically a conference day before those Plugfests. We will just focusing it all around open source and e-mobility. So there's currently kind of a call for papers. If you have something interesting to share, EVerest related, non-EVerest related, doesn't matter. So it should be all around software, especially open source and e-mobility. Just tell us your proposals, and really, really looking forward to meet all of you. So looking also a bit back, we have been on the CharIN Testival in Valencia some weeks ago, and we will be next week in the United States, but that's on the looking forward news. We had the first ISO 118-20 DC charging session. Yes, also with the vector tester, but I think also with some of the car vendors there. I think I can't name brands. Yeah, sure. The Dean spec and the ISO 11-2 also work very well, but that's already boring. We see more and more cars with plug and charge. We also hijacked another local German festival where actually public broad audience can just test drive electric cars and even trucks. And we just went around with our micro megawatt charger and tested a couple of those. That was quite fun to see. For example, here the design work. Yeah, we also collected quite some log files and also will put that on our public repo. Then another thing we're currently organizing was recently announced. There's a DevRoom from the Fosdem conference in, I think, was it Brussels, in February. The LF Energy, together with Pionix and other companies, is organizing basically sub-track around the energy ecosystem in open source. I think in total they have like 20, 30 parallel tracks, maybe even more. It's a huge, huge conference. And I was there last year. I think we had half a day of really dense talks about energy and software. Will be fun. Please submit your paper, your proposal. Looking forward to that as well. So then more to the code side of the updates. There was quite some new documentation pulled together by some freshly onboarded Pionix employees. So thank you a lot for that you wrote down your issues with the software. And we have been able to update the documentation for that. First of all, how does the module concept works, how to connect modules, and and how do you create your first module on yourself. So please check that out. I think we also put that on the mailing list already. And this was brought in by Shankari. You want to say about that yourself?
Yeah, so the Joint Office has been talking to quite a few stakeholders, you know, both at the charging level and also at the auto manufacturer level. And there's been significant interest in sharing test cases. When we went into this, we weren't sure people would want to do that, but I would just ask at every meeting, you know, if you want to make sure that everything works, we need to have a broader set of test cases. Will you give us the ad hoc ones that you're using beyond what is in the actual OCTT? And a surprising number of people said, okay, or, you know, we're interested in sort of coming up with this sort of crowdsourced set of expanded test cases. And so we're planning at CharIN to solicit these. So there will be a presentation by Sarah Heipel in which she will talk about EVerest and you know, the work that we're doing. And at the end of that, there will be a, you know, learn more and or work with us, give us test cases, so on. The details are still being worked out. And so right now, at least, we're thinking that there will be 2 types of test cases that we'll get. One of them is test logs, right? Like the ones that are in the log files right now, but may not involve EVerest on the SECC. So it may just be a set of messages that are being transmitted back and forth between the car and the charging station. But the other one is likely to be just text descriptions. You know, I initiated this, but I got this error. If people are not comfortable sharing logs. We don't yet know what we're going to get. But before we sort of went out there, since we have, I guess, 4 days or whatever working days to think about this, I just wanted to bring it up and see if people have thoughts or feedback on what we should ask for and what you think we'll get. And of course, the challenge is that we need to balance sufficient detail so we can actually reproduce this and you know, make it useful, but without putting too much of a burden on people to actually specify what they're doing.
Yeah, thanks a lot. And also, I think to give you some feedback on how we at Pionix did it so far, but it would also help us. So in the festivals, it's all prototype cars. You can't name companies. So sometimes we say like, okay, this is a prototype car from that company, or it's just another prototype car and we're just giving only a text description. So every kind of detail, yeah, like you tested it with a certain brand and a certain software version, up to, yeah, you tested it to a new prototype, but you can't disclose anything. Everything of that will help. So yeah, please make file a bug report to that repository or make a pull request to the README. Highly appreciated. So all kind of details, whatever you can disclose. And if you want to disclose something more confidentially, there's also a technical steering committee mailing list where only the TSC members can read, so not the public broad audience. So anything confidential, you can also just mail there. That is everest-tsc@list.lfnad.org. So if you want to communicate confidential with us. Okay, next is Rust. Holger, you want to take this over?
Yes, for sure. So just a reminder, what is Rust all about? We here at Qwello, we want to make Rust a preferred choice for writing production-worthy EVerest modules with low boilerplate, with high type safety, make illegal states non-expressible, make many bugs impossible, hence, and provide an idiomatic development experience with perfect interoperability with the rest of EVerest and 100% feature support. And the non-goals remain to write explorative or debug modules or modules specifically for the frameworks. So I keep saying that. I will probably skip that slide in the future, but this is the goal. That's what we're setting out to The update in the last few weeks, the first Rust example modules are finally merged to main. They don't have really functionality at this point. They're just example modules on how you can write an EVerest module. Very freshly, they also now support config, like module config, which we didn't have. So the only missing feature now really is multi-slot modules, which is not really a niche, but we haven't built that yet. We have also sent out the code generation. So the idea is basically you point a code generator at the manifest file and then creates type-saved bindings to the rest of the framework for you. This means that you never have to check in any generated Rust code ever. And that also means that no received EVerest message can have type errors on paper. This is in review. It is unfortunately not yet merged because we have still a couple of open questions how we want to go about it. But we actually internally using this at Qwello already quite successfully.
Thanks a lot. That's really, really awesome. Looking forward to it. So payment support, also Qwello, but
it's also us. Yeah, it kind of leads very nicely into that. So for payment terminal integration, specifically CVT support, there are 2 work streams that I can report on here. The first one is that Qwello opened a discussion in the merge request 425, which contains public interfaces that you need to interact with the payment terminal. So this is basically the interfaces, the EVerest interfaces, and the types you need. This is actually fairly complex because, for example, if you have a payment terminal session, you have to, like, a user touches a card, some money is reserved on that card, and then when the session ends, only the amount that the session actually cost is billed on the card. You cannot bill more. So actually, if a session runs longer than what was reserved for, the session must be ended somehow. And that is a concept that actually, for example, is a new concept that needs to be dragged into EVerest. And that requires quite a few other new things. For example, representation of tariffs and like basically calculating on the device how much a currently running session costs. Also, we're discussing representation of currencies. Right now, EVerest has a floating point representation, which we would like to change into like an integer representation. So that is actually, if you're interested in payment terminals, you should be on that merge request. We also have open sourced this week our ZVT crate, which is actually the library that we're using to interact with our payment terminals, which is the FIX event. This is not yet an EVerest module. We have an EVerest module, and we would like to open source that, but this depends on like this merge request going in, this 425 one, and the code gen merge request going in. So I hope I can update on that in 4 weeks' time from now.
Yeah, looking forward. There's one question from Achim. Achim, is it quick? Should we just take it in now or at the end?
It will be quick. How is this aligned with all Open Charge Alliance working groups on payment terminals? And for the tariffs, how is this aligned with OCPP 2.1?
I cannot answer the question how this is aligned with the Open Charge Alliance working groups because I'm not aware of these ones. It is actually not really related to OCPP 2.0, right? This is basically how the payment terminal talks to the charging station. And that actually provides EVerest interfaces, which I assume OCPP modules will be using later on.
There we have tariffs, and the internal representation of tariffs and calculation of prices will be included in 2.1.
Yeah. So
yes.
At the moment, we will get an update on OCPP, I think a bit later. Maybe we can put that into that discussion. At the moment, there's really full steam ahead on getting 2.01, including those different sub-releases of that running where they're changing different units. So 2.1 is a bit later on the roadmap. But yeah, for sure, we will refactor this over time. I'm pretty sure that won't be the last touch on this.
Just send someone to the discussions on 2.1 on their Open Charge Alliance technical working group mailing list. Because at the moment I'm the only guy discussing this tariff stuff and so on.
Achim, we are
good when there would be a second guy.
Yes.
Because I think they're doing a little bit strange things.
Okay. Thank you. Noted. I think Robert is on some working
Robert
groups.
is there. No, he is there. There was just the latest meeting, I think, yesterday.
Okay.
And I'm
let's go.
invited too, but I don't think we need to be both in these calls, in these working group calls.
Okay. So OCPP, talking about which, Pete, you want to take that over?
Yeah, maybe also one word on the payment integration. We are aware of possible conflicts between the solution that we are currently designing and OSPP, and we're considering this and discussing this also as part of the pull request discussion, Achim, where you can have a look into. And yeah, the goal is to find a solution that supports any use case that might be there in the future. But yeah, we are aware of the fact that there are also solutions for sales and tariffs also on OSPP 201 and 21. Right, so for the general update on OSPP 16 and 201, of course, we have been mainly working on OSPP 201. There will be a first certification of OSPP 201 with libOSPP, not like for the development kit from Pionix, but for a different charging station that uses libOSPP that's targeted for the beginning of December. So we are already quite far. We are currently fighting the last core test cases. So with the software in the loop, we at Pionix or with the EVerest simulation, we are at 85 to 90% test cases passing. And right now, it looks like most of the test cases where we have problems are due to OCTT2 bugs or design issues of the test cases that have been reported to the OCTT team. So those will be probably figured out in the next weeks. Then we have made a slight change to the data transfer mechanism for OSPP 1.6 and OSPP 201, so that now actually supports both directions of this data transfer, so that you can use libOSPP with your custom integration of any kind of data transfer mechanism that you want to interface. Right, that's basically it.
Thank you. So ExiGen, someone from ChartByte here, who want to take that over?
Yes, I can do so. Actually, yeah, I'm representing here now Moritz. He's sick, so yeah.
Thank you, Martin.
Welcome. Yeah, actually, there's nothing much to add. So we are just in the fine-tuning phase, making out the last fine issues here, working on issues, bringing, let's say the last few things to work to bring to life, right? So that's the part. I think for the future, I think it's quite has been done simply, right? So I think there could be some more issues coming up if we release a new cbV2G with the -20 stuff, etc. I can imagine that there will be some we can bring this into this presentation, but actually quite far ahead and just wiping out the last few issues.
Thanks a lot. Okay, ISO 15118. You want to take that one? Pete or Kai? I'm not sure.
Sebastian is here, unfortunately.
Okay.
Yeah, right. So I can give it a try, but I'm probably not the best person because I don't know everything in detail. But yeah, there will be the CharIN Testival in Cleveland next week, where we will test our ISO stack again with different car manufacturers in the USA, and we will probably doing tests with plug and charge -20, -2 again. I think our -20 implementation is further than it was in Valencia. So there had been some work going on the ISO 15118 charger interface where we try to combine the -2 functionality and the -20 functionality. And I remember that there had been some issues with the graceful TCP and TLS sessions shutdown, and I can see on the slide that those apparently have been addressed. So this is something that we will be testing in Cleveland then.
Okay, thanks a lot. And I think also, Shankar, you already mentioned you will be there as well. And I think ChargeByte will be there as well. And I think many, many more EVerest users. Okay, EVerest framework. Kai, I would guess.
Yeah, there have been quite a few, say, minor or medium-sized things added to the framework. By popular request, it's now possible to completely disable the admin panel, so you don't have to host it on your embedded device. Then the error handling that had been merged a month earlier has now also been extended to work for the JavaScript and Python modules. I'm pretty sure this will also get added to the Rust modules at some point. Another minor thing that basically helps EVerest itself start up a little bit faster is this disabling of redundant validations. We are in the process of refactoring this configuration system a little bit. So this might even get a little bit faster in the forthcoming future, but this already shaved off a few hundred milliseconds here or there. Yeah, and then just some minor fixes here and there, and an extension to the errors feature that you can also now basically subscribe to global errors and report global errors as well.
Thanks a lot. And November release. So yay, to be released soon, I guess.
Yeah, to be released soon, probably next week. To try and get some of the last interesting features in. This is a short overview of some of the things. As for the framework, there have been some small performance improvements in the EVerest core as well, to basically make the AC basic charging a little bit faster. There's been a feature merged that you can actually get the authorization status from the token authorization from the auth module. As Holger already mentioned, there's now config support for the Rust module. And as Pete already mentioned, we have OCPP data transfer now basically represented as a dedicated interface that the OCPP 1.6 and 2.0.1 modules implement. There has been ongoing work on the CI system, and there will be much more to come here as well. Yeah, there's been a few bug fixes, like a memory leak in the persistent store module was fixed. You can now enable or disable this run script generation, which is quite nice if you're building it with Yocto, for example. You can just set a flag and these scripts don't get generated at all. We will now I think in the USA manager, this is retry the proximity pilot reading if that value wasn't available at the beginning, I think, of a transaction. And the system interface has been extended with one command to explicitly allow firmware updates. This is something that is quite useful if you're doing it over OCPP and there's still a charging session, for example, ongoing. You can get a firmware update in, and the system module will now get a signal when it is actually when the system is in a state where it can proceed installing the update. Ergo, like the transactions have all been finished, and this station is set to unavailable.
Mm. Yeah. Thanks a lot. So then some big news, and I forgot to prepare a graph on this, but let me quickly show you some interesting statistics. So this is the EVerest community mailing list. And if you look on the traffic, the messages we sent out every month, last year November it was 30. This year November, so we only at day 23, we already have 200. So we have, I would say, almost a 10x growth in traffic. And also compared to last month, we will have a 2 to 3x growth. So this is really crazy. And yeah, we have to do something about it. So first of all, yeah, we're super lucky and happy with this success. But we have to keep the machine going, and therefore we want to split up. So this was mentioned by many different independent people from different companies. So it's like a general demand which is in the air. The idea is the public weekly engineering call is at the moment too shallow. There's no much needed space in there for discussion. We want to have this established working groups where the results can be also presented in the TSC. So in the future, you might see sections for different working groups in this update call. And we want to have separate communication channels. So not everything is going over the same mailing list. So the current idea for working groups we would like to propose is one for charter cloud communication. So like OCPP 1.6, 2.01. There might be more of those standards in the future. One working group for charter communication. So obviously all the ISO, XC, Slack. But in the future, maybe also CharDemo, then EVerest framework and tools, so more general. And testing turned out to be something where a lot of people are interested and we maybe should factor out. And for sure, there's like the general working group, which we already have, this weekly call, that will stay. This is like the initial breakdown we would suggest. How should that work? Every working group should have a lot of members. It's public, everyone could become a member, but please be aware that might be technical. So at the moment, it's not planned to, let's say, that every newbie goes in there, only if you want to become an expert on something. So it's really like those who refactor on packages. There will be a chair and a co-chair leading that and organizing that. You will have dedicated public meetings, maybe weekly, maybe on demand, up to the working groups. There should be a dedicated channel. We will try out Zulip instead of emailing list probably. You will have GitHub discussions. You will link in the pull request to the GitHub discussions whenever you do a bug fix. That's kind of the idea what we got asked from many people. Those working groups should own certain repositories. For example, the working group 2, charter communication, will probably also own, let's say, the XC repository or the Slack repository or the lib ISO 15118 repository. Some repositories will have shared ownership like EVerest Core, probably mainly framework and tools, but other working groups have also something to say in that. Yeah, and every working group should take care of their own documentation. We would hope to find a chair and a co-chair for every group who is taking care of the calendaring, sending out invites, steering meeting agenda, report the line upstream with the technical steering committee, with the broader community, manage the GitHub permissions, and also help with the definition of the scope of the working group, align that with the technical steering committee, and also align with the neighbor groups. We're not sure how technical the chair has to be. There was still a bit of an open discussion. I think that will be on case by case, but at least those people should be really dedicated and committed on not only driving a particular library, but really driving forward entire EVerest from a certain angle. So if someone is, let's say, only interested in a certain library, but not entire EVerest, he or she might co-chair, but we also need to have the bigger EVerest angle in perspective here. So we started discussion on the public mailing list and on the weekly calls. So we have kind of a concept ready, what you see here. So there's a line overlay. So next step would be asking for membership interest, finding chairs for those groups, and making sure they're getting operational by early next year. And this is something we would like to propose and see for all the TSC voting members here in the room. So who would be in favor, who is in disfavor, and who is opting out to vote? So let's ask first, who is all in favor of this? I for Pionix, for Marco. Anyone else?
For Qwello.
I from Join Office.
Yeah, me from Pionix as well.
Okay, thanks a lot.
I'm also here. I just take over the role from Moritz now, I guess.
Thank you. So anyone in disfavor of this? No. Anyway, opting out. Awesome. I think then we get working groups. Awesome. That's really interesting to see and looking forward to that. So then GitHub permissions. At the moment, it's a bit of, let's say, grown structure, same on most repos, but not the same. We would like to also clean that up. That will be tightly linked to the working groups. We would like to have a code owners file in each repository. Those will automatically be the reviewers for the code. And then let's figure it out, 1 or 2 mandatory reviews who have to approve on every pull request. And yeah, then for each repository, we have a few people who can change that code owners file. And they should have obviously a lot of trust because they can decide who are the gatekeepers. So basically, they can also remove and add gatekeepers to the repositories. So these are probably the chairs of the working groups, but let's see. Again, here, who's in favor of that change? I. Holger, Martin, Shankari, Kai.
I have question marks around that. So generally, I like the idea of code owners, but I'm not so sure what it means. Like basically, the repo admins and the organization owners. So in generally, I like the idea of code owners, but I would like to discuss a bit more what it means to be an organization owner and repo admin.
So basically, the idea is we will have a couple of people who can change the code owners. So it's like a meta level. Code owners can review and approve pull requests for certain repositories, but they can't define new code owners. The organization admins can change the set of code owners. So it's kind of a super admin with next level of permissions. And since this is really a growing organization, that set should obviously be smaller. And I see it somewhere around the TSC, either the TSC themselves or closely related to that.
So would the code owners be able to merge changes, or would they primarily review?
Basically, code owners can approve, and then we have to decide if it's 1 or 2 who need a positive approval, let's say no disapproval. And then afterwards, every committer, and I would say that are the same as the code owners, can actually do the merge.
Right, because the Linux Foundation process typically has committers.
Yes.
And so I just wanted, I guess I wasn't 100% clear on what the difference between code owners and committers is.
It's close, like code owners can basically do review on different fractions of the code, and committers can actually do the pull request. So we could also have a similar behavior, but just, let's say, having different committers for every repo, that would do the same. The benefit of code owners, in theory, you can split within one repository for different subtrees of the code for different code owners. So the idea is it's really, really linked to that. I think in the beginning, we'll have code owners the same. Let's say we have one code owners file for every repo, and those people are the same as the committers on that repo. That is at least kind of the current status, but later on, I think the committers might be a subset of the reviewers. At least I think that feels natural. Or more feedback. Let's say at least the minimum task here, what we would like to define is getting a structure in that. So the main goal is that the different working groups defining who is reviewing and approving and merging which repo. So we would like to delegate that away from the TSC and a bit into the working groups. And they should figure out the details for their scope of work. There will be overlaps, and that might be interesting how we deal with that.
Yeah, maybe we can kick that decision down the bucket a bit, right? Like what I worry about is, my past experience with code owners is that you have, let's say you have like in EVerest framework, you have like a bunch of subdirectories with different code owners, and then you make a change that actually touches on all of those directories. Then you have to kind of like wait for every code owner of every subdirectory to give you approval.
No, as far as I know, it's not. I think as if you say those will all be added to your reviewers list, and as soon as, let's say, we're defining we need 2 positive reviews, so as soon as 2 of any of the code owners approved, then you're green. But the problem is it might be 2 of the, let's say, the OCPP organization and none of the ISO organization, even though in theory you need both. So I think at the end of the day, there will be gray zones. We either need way more advanced CI, which is not by default within GitHub. So that I think especially the shared repository, their code, we need code owners who have oversight about everything, because this,
Right.
what you just described is not with all off-the-shelf tools possible.
Yeah, actually, I would agree to that, right? So, but then it also sounds to me that we should start on a repository level and then see if we want finer grained control.
Yes.
Instead of the other way around, starting with the finest control possible and then refining upwards. I would rather go the other
idea,
way.
I think, in some of the LF Energy files, it's defined that we should have code owner files for every repository. But what we would say is there should be only 1 code owners for every repository. So we're not doing that on directory level yet, but using that mechanism. But we're not using it fully. So let's say there's only 1 code owner's file per repo.
But then you maintain that list twice, right? You have the committers to the repo and you have the code owners, and they should basically be a perfect match, right?
Potentially, yeah.
Yeah.
I also briefly looked up code owners right now because I've never used that for any of my projects. But it looks like all the code owners do have to actually have write access to the repo. And what a code owner.
No, I think not. I don't think so.
I am reading about code owners, and it says people you choose as code owners must have write permissions for the repository.
Okay.
So it seems like what code owners basically gives us is the ability to automatically assign reviewers.
Yes.
And if they are going to be the same as the committers, I kind of agree with Holger that maybe we should just start with committers. Do the working group refactor first, and then do the code owners addition later. That would be my proposal.
Sounds
so
good.
actually having automatically assigned reviewers is a nice feature.
Yeah, but
so let's put it this way. We will use the working group to define repository owners, people lists, or committal and reviewer list, see what matches do we find there, and see if we can do it without code owners file. I thought there was some definition somewhere in the LF Energy that we should have code owners files. We don't have them yet. So I will double check that. So there might be some statutes forcing us to do that, but I'm also happy to not making that overhead twice. Okay, then let's postpone that discussion and start with, or someone else, something to add? Kai or Martin?
No, I think I agree with the general consensus. It's start with the working groups. The working groups can get an own understanding maybe of this, and then we have another discussion about
that. It's more visible for me too. Yeah.
And maybe it feels a bit like that. Probably the framework and tools working group will lead this discussion because they have like a more general role on the infrastructure. Awesome, thanks. Okay, then issues and response time. So Shankar, you want to present that yourself? That was your proposal?
Yeah, so this came up because as you know, Accenture is going to do the work for the joint office, and they're setting up their agile ceremonies, and they wanted to know. So I strongly requested and required, I guess, that they should file issues so we can have discussions in the community before just sort of doing things. But then they were like, well, I don't want to wait for 3 weeks to get a response on my issue because that's going to affect my backlog and so on. And so I just spitballed this sort of high-level response time proposal, and I'd like to see what other people think about it. But what we were thinking was, at least for high-level design decisions, we want to make sure that it's aligned with the community, right? We want to get consensus. So we will file issues. I think we agreed that they're going to be repo-level issues, at least for the working group. So we'll just file an issue there, or if it's an overarching issue, it'll go into the generic EVerest repo. And then the question was, how do we know that there is consensus? And basically, my proposal was, well, if the maintainers, at least one maintainer, or whatever we have for pull request approval, something similar is to say that there's consensus here and they can start working on it. And in terms of response time, the proposal was, if there's no response for a week, we're going to assume that people agree and start coding. But eventually it'll be reviewed as part of the PR anyway. The last two things actually I added today morning, but they were concerned about, what happens if there isn't consensus, like there's a lot of conflict and so on. And my proposal was that we'll discuss it at the tech sync. And if even at the tech sync we're not able to get to consensus, then it has to go up to the TSC. I think that's pretty straightforward, but I just wanted to write it out.
Sounds perfect. I would add to that list that for high frequency discussion, I think that will maybe happen in the working groups, whatever working group this touches. And I think in your case, for example, the Accenture people might be part of one or many of the working groups. Let's see. At least if you do a big architectural change on a big subsystem, you want to be in that working group.
Right.
And those working group will have those Zulip channels. And I agree that the summary and the final reasoning behind things should be in GitHub issues,
Right.
but maybe not every 30 seconds a post. So
Right.
that might be more in a meeting or in a Slack channel or Zulip channel, sorry.
Right. So I agree with that. I should have actually put it in this because we discussed that in the weekly tech chat as well. But I think their concern was more, we start off with filing an issue to highlight, here's the thing we want to do. And then, for 2 weeks, there's no response. And then their backlog will start slipping. So
yes,
this was for that. Okay.
But I mean, yeah, also happy if you file something like, not we want to do something like, okay, but we're thinking about doing something in that domain. Often it's also worse to reach out with even that premature state, because maybe someone else is already doing things without following the process. So it's always good to reach out to the working groups, even if you're thinking about doing something more dramatically.
Yeah, I think some of that is going to be driven by, these people we're talking to. So it is going to be like, we're going to do it. But I think what I've been pushing for people to do is to file an issue saying, here's what we want to do, and here's how we think we're going to do it, and then get feedback on that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, just let's say before you do, let's say a week of research how to do it, maybe even can post even the problem without a solution. That's might shortcut like a week of research how to solve it.
Sounds
because
good.
Maybe someone else is already solving it in the background.
Yep. Makes sense.
Awesome. Yeah. Sounds good with the changes. Anyone else something to add?
I think I would go even a little bit further here. Some of the discussions in the last couple of weeks have kind of pointed towards that maybe it might be a good idea to rethink our stance on issues in general on the repositories. I heard from some people that it would be quite beneficial if you're only focused on things like, for example, libOCPP, for example, to have the ability to just open issues on these repositories and not have that one main EVerest repository, because there it doesn't get it's not so clear for people that they can open issues for the libraries there, and they're a little bit more confused, I would say, that they can't open issues on the repositories themselves.
Yeah, but basically this is the first bullet point here. Hi, so first do it in the repos, and it doesn't fit, then go on the higher level. So yes, we have to change the permission scheme and the settings of GitHub for that.
I've interpreted it like this, that it is more geared towards like high-level design decisions and not issues in general. But if that's the common understanding that this means all issues, then yeah, I have not said anything.
Right. So for this, you'll have to enable repo level issues for at least the high level design decisions. And if it's there, people are going to use it.
So the reason why we haven't activated this in the past, because the community was so small, but we had so many repos. So there was a bit of issue to having oversight about so many repos. But now we grew, we now have working groups. I think that's resolving itself. So now we can open up that repo level issue tracking.
My expectation is you open up issues tracking, you will have a lot of confusion between EVerest, like the EVerest repo, not the organization. The EVerest repo, EVerest core, and EVerest framework.
Yeah, but worst case, I mean, you're right. There will be a lot of issues maybe in the wrong repo, but the question is it so dramatically bad? I mean, you can do with GitHub projects, you can build dashboards which are cross projects.
Yeah, I don't think it's bad. It's just what I would expect.
Yeah, totally.
And I mean, it would be very nice to basically have like a clear entry point for people who want to play with EVerest for the first time and run into issues, right? Like an obvious place to file issues, which I would expect they do in EVerest, which is fine, right? If we basically have this as kind of like the newbie forum, hey, it doesn't work, do I hold it wrong? Then that is fine for me.
Yeah, that's how we described it at the moment, and we have to make sure that it's in all the documentation, that people are steered in the right direction. But people will do it anyway wrong. But yes, that's a task for the documentation team to get that as good as possible directed.
You could also choose to have one set of issues for both core and framework if it is hard to distinguish between them. Like you don't have to have it for every single repo, but I think that what we're saying here is you also can't have it only in EVerest. Like at least some of the other repos should have issues enabled.
I think I like the idea of doing it only once or doing it for everything. But like having it for half of them, I think that will get complex.
Okay.
My opinion, but happy to see others. Kai, Holger, I saw your thumbs up, Holger.
Yeah, I would enable it for all repos.
Yeah, just enable it for all.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, let's do that. Okay, any other feedback, or I think we reached consensus here? Okay, Martin agreeing. Awesome, thanks a lot. So next one, this is more FYI. Basically, we had a small discussion by emailing list around the TSC members. There's a new mailing list, which is called EVerest Announce. Beside the EVerest mailing list, which was only called EVerest, where we do low frequency updates, because EVerest mailing list is so high frequency, people get annoyed. So the new mailing list will be used in the future for the, let's say, the announcement of the TSC steering committee meeting minutes, for, let's say, a couple of mails a month, not hundreds. We will try to make sure that announcement goes over both channels, so you not necessarily have to subscribe to both. But if you're getting annoyed before you unsubscribe, please subscribe to the new list. So TSC vote. We kind of already did that today with having Martin here. Martin, for example, is no official TSC member, but he is filling back for one sick member from ChargeByte. I would love to make this more officially, put it into our statutes, into our charter, that we can delegate votes if someone felt sick or if someone is on a wrong time zone for participate in a meeting. Any opinions on this?
Makes sense to me.
I think it's fine.
Awesome.
Yep. Like that.
Perfect. Then let me work with LF Energy staff to put this in the right document in the right way. I think there's different places where I could put that. You will get an update. Thanks a lot. Another consensus reached. Next slide. So what's new? Let's go back to the more broad community topics. Not so much change on the roadmap. Just quickly, we're working on OCP, ISO, Rust, payment terminal, a lot of documentation training material. We're always adding drivers a lot. I know that different companies have different private repositories for drivers because for NDA reasons they can't make that public. That's true for Pionix. I think that's true for Qwello and for CharIN and for many others. So if you have anything missing, just mail to the mailing list because maybe someone can help you. And yeah, this is ongoing work. For next year, there's a lot around. Probably remote connections will also come to the table, so you can run EVerest on multiple machines. The agent charging standards might come. We're really looking forward to donations here. If someone has a char demo stack or GPT stack or even CharG stack, looking into energy management, EE bus implementation, IEEE 2030.5, and so on. So if there's anything you have, please let us know. Oh, I forgot one item here. That is wireless charging. So for pantographs or for inductive charging, I think it's ISO 15118-8. So we found some implementations around the web, and I heard some people on the mailing list wanted to get started on that. So that's also happening. Just forgot it on the slide. Also, Pete, you want to fill us in on that slide?
Yeah, no big changes to the timeline here. I mean, today we have like a complete 1.6 implementation, and we are close to being done with 2.0.1 core. So there will be first certifications in Q4 for the core profile, including authorization, configuration, transactions, remote control, security, functional blocks. Then we would like to target first OSPP 2.0.1 BPT messages, so notify EV charging needs and set charging profile requests. And we plan to harmonize the OSPP error codes. There are some approaches to this that we're looking into. And then in Q1 and Q2, we basically want to, so in Q1 first, we want to pick up the low-hanging fruit. So that's basically adding smart charging, ISO 15118 certificate management we actually already have. Plug and charge is, yeah, something that we can quickly add, but we're just not focusing at the moment. As well as,
so we have plug and charge for 1.6, but not for 2.01.
Yeah, I mean, it basically it works already for 2.0.1, but there are some configuration variables that we need to take care of in libOSPP. But basically, when there's a vehicle and you plug it in and you have OSPP 2.0.1 hooked up, it would also work. But there are some checks that you need to do within libOSPP in order to validate the token directly. That's basically a question. Do I send this token to the central system, or can I validate it locally? Those kind of things is that we need to add. But this is why I said low-hanging fruits. That's just something that we already have within EVerest, and we just need to hook this up properly. And then we target to have a full implementation of OSPP 2 within Q2 2024.
Thanks a lot. So, and then next on the ISO 15118 timeline. So there's, today we have the ISO 15118-2 fully implemented and tested and operational. We have the DIN spec stack 71-1. We have bidirectional POCs based on, let's say, a hacked version of the -2 where we just ignoring the signs. And there's also, let's say, a proper implementation of that, the SAE J2847-2, which is, let's say, a US standardized fork of the -2, where you can do bidirectional. We are currently working off Joseph Community Edition based -20 for the car side. So you have a way to simulate in EVerest fully software in the loop -20. But we stop planning to integrate Joseph for the charger side. Just too much overhead, and in our experience, no one is going to use that code base for the charger side on an industrial product. For testing, it's fine if you're running it on a big machine with less reliability requests. But so the really operational code in the charger should be C++. We're making so much progress on that, so we skipped adding Joseph here. I mean, someone can add it as well. I mean, it's flexible from the EVerest infrastructure, but at least Pionix is not going to do that. But we're adding Joseph for the car simulator. So in Q4, we will have the ISO 15118-20 in C++, XC and state machine, everything for DC and DC bidirectional. Q1, we try to stabilize that and also start a beta release for AC bidirectional. So an IC bidirectional should be then stable in Q2. And there are some folks starting on ISO 15118-8 for the Wi-Fi communication, for pantograph charging, for inductive charging. So also that is in the making. Next, upcoming events. Yeah, again, there's a lot going on in EVerest around the world. Next week, North America CharIN for Testival. As we said before, Joel will be there, ChartBite will be there, Pionix will be there, and a lot of more of our community members we already heard will be there. I will be at the same time in Tokyo, Japan, on the Global Brains Alliance Forum. It's a big venture capital organization working across the globe with a lot of Asian corporates, and they have once a year forum where they're presenting startups and ideas from around the world. I will be there on stage. So if you're around in Asia or in Tokyo, please let me know. I'm happy to also give a visit to you. Also, way back last week, I was in China, in Shenzhen, also visited quite a lot of vendors there. A lot of them also interested in EVerest. Then 19th of December, that's more an internal note to the TSC members here. There will be the annual EVerest review in front of the Technical Advisory Committee of the LF Energy. So basically, our parent organization from what we do here today, they have once a year a review of us. And if you look on the growth numbers, that will be fun. I think we'll have quite some positive messages to spread. So beginning of January, we'll be on the CES, Pionix, and I think also a couple of other partners in the EVerest ecosystems. There will be some new announcements there. Fosdem, we already mentioned that. There's a call for papers, Energy DevRoom from the Linux Foundation Energy. Kai is also co-hosting that DevRoom. Please submit your proposals. We'll be on eWorld in Essen in Germany. We'll have our own at Pionix-based Emobility and open source and Emobility conference for one day. And afterwards, the Open Charge Alliance Plugfest here. We're looking for quite some visitors. And EVerest 37 in Seoul, Korea is also for April planned. And at least there will be a Pionix and a bit of an EVerest booth. And also maybe talk about EVerest, but let's see who else want to join that. Yeah, and I think that's it for this week's TSC, for this month's TSC. Next one will be basically a Christmas edition, 21st of December. I think we moved it a bit because of we don't want to make it between Christmas and New Year's Day, so it's a week earlier than usual. And yeah, please also join our weekly discussions every Tuesday, 4 p.m. Central European Time. Just sign up for the mailing list here, and there will be more mailing lists. There will be more working groups. So this is now all getting started. And if you're interested in any of the working groups, please drop us a mail on the EVerest mailing list. We're happy to dispatch you on the working groups. If you see more needs, how to grow this community, if you want to join that, please let us know. Thank you for your attention. And yeah, let's continue with discussion.